Welcome back to 88 Chats. I'm Denise.
I'm Katie.
Advisory disclaimer. This is just our opinion. Please don't take it as fact. Don't send hate to anybody. We want to love everybody.
So today's topic, we are at the ending week for the Johnny Depp Amber Heard case. And so there has been a lot of stuff going on.
So much.
So let's start with...
I have come to the point, as of today, I'm so over this case. I'm ready for this to be done. It seems like a consensus among many people who've been following it. I crammed today to try to make sure that I was up to date on everything that I could possibly have missed that's happened. And it does seem like, compared to the first couple weeks where there was just a flood of information, people were nitpicking every detail, this week it's actually been kind of difficult to get updates because everyone's just done. We're ready for this to be over with. If it's not a big bombshell, it's just not important enough.
Because of TMZ.
Yes. So there was a former employee of TMZ who did take the stand today. They asked him how they get their information, the time that it takes, and it comes down to copyrights. So when TMZ gets a tip, they have to verify the copyright of the files or information that they're sharing to make sure they're allowed to share it. If it's difficult to acquire or verify a copyright, it can take quite a long time for them to release footage. If the copyright is easily obtained or verified, it can take as little as 12 to 15 minutes. They asked the man how long it had taken them from the time they received the video, I believe, that they received to when they shared it. And he said it took about 12 minutes, which implies he did not specifically say who had supplied the video or how they obtained it, but it is implied from that information that they received that video from the copyright holder directly. It was not said that it came from Amber, but it's pretty much implied that it was. The other thing was that he outright said that the copy of the video that was sent to TMZ that they released was edited, that parts of the video that is now currently available for viewing is longer and has elements that were not originally shared with TMZ. Those include parts where she is obviously setting up the camera for what's about to happen, and also her laughing and giggling. I believe that was towards the end, which I have seen and I definitely found incriminating. But that's why, for anyone who may have seen just the original TMZ footage, it's not on there. They received a shortened version as released originally. The lines are really being drawn more clearly because it's become very obvious that Depp's intention is to get his truth out into the world in general. It's not necessarily about winning this case, because he knows if it's televised and I'm telling you what I'm telling you, you're going to hear it, plain and simple, whether I win or lose, it's out there. And so for him, in what his goal is of just getting the information out to the general public, it might not win his case, but that doesn't seem to be his priority. For Amber and her team, it seems like winning is the priority, which, before we keep going, I do think it's also important to speak directly to victims. We are not saying that anything talking about this case means that we don't believe you. We absolutely want to make sure that it is understood to believe victims, believe people who are speaking out. So I just want to make sure that if you are a listener and are in any way feeling that this is directed at you, this is a very specific case.
So to add to that statement, I'm also saying we support everybody, not just women, men, the LGBTQ plus community, just because domestic violence doesn't just affect women, it affects people from all different types of sexuality, sexual preference. Yeah. So we support you all, because a lot of times, there's a lot of things we don't hear about. Yes, the majority of people we hear are about women. Yes, we support those people too. But there is a small percentage of certain groups that don't get to speak up. And in this case, this is one of those cases where it is in one of those rare categories of a man facing DV. Sometimes the most uncomfortable conversation needs to be talked about, no matter what you think or what you believe. Sometimes those conversation needs to be talked about, because then we can help understand each other better and try to build something that's better, that will be helpful for all people, not just a specific group, or to basically break that glass ceiling of those stereotypes that we see and hear. So my take on this is because the TMZ producer, love his sassiness, love that, especially when he's like, because Elaine was trying to say, you're here for your 15 minutes of fame, mister. He was like, no, because I don't have anything to gain. I'm actually putting a target on my back from TMZ by doing this. And I could say the exact same thing for you. You are representing somebody who is out there, a huge star, and you could be claiming your 15 minutes of fame. It goes both ways here. I love that comment. And he's like a little bit aggressive, like, because right before he said anything, he object, saying it was, and then he's proved it. Like, that's why this question.
Yeah, that was great. I've been really enjoying the sassier witnesses. I think that's really, really fun. It does spice it up for sure.
Just because, like, you don't really get to see that spiciness. You can tell that he's not biased. He has everything to lose rather than gain. He also talked about the photos.
It was something about the specific phrasing that he said about how their photographers would be at the courthouse because they knew or were notified, or
they were tipped off.
And,
and he would send out the photographers to be there because there was a tip. And so she would always show the side of her where the bruise was. I didn't like, this kind of goes to DV victims. You don't want cameras looking at your face. You're trying to get out, and yeah, usually people, there's a breakthrough saying, I want to get out, I have to get out, they have to file order, but at the exact same time, they don't want to make it public.
And there have been many, many comments from survivors that have said very much the same thing, that it's just completely out of character with the normal behavioral patterns. There tends to be more shame and hiding involved, and she definitely did the opposite of that, not just in those photos, definitely in the photos, but also pretty much every step along the way. She's been really.
It goes to the point of what Dr. Curry said on the stand as well, saying on these checklists, you can see how she answered. It was specifically, she answered a specific way, and then she over embellished, which kind of shows a sign that it is not PTSD from DB. So it makes it kind of go inside with her her statement. Another thing about these, like, I love how Amber's team tried to go for board certified experts, and they are complete, I don't want to say bonkers.
Oh yeah, they've been the most aggressive.
Yeah, basically for me, how it comes across is you can be board certified and still be an idiot.
Definitely. There was that one witness,
the psychologist, the one that made the face that kind of looks like the guy from Back to the Future.
There was the tech analyst who was discussing the I'm going to use the wrong terms here, so I apologize, but basically the metadata related stuff, the information in the files of the pictures, and that it's his profession. And again, they went after, do you have any certifications? And he basically flat out said, well, no, I don't have those certifications, but I've been doing this job in the field for 30 years, and the certification is a 2-week course. So do I really need that? And it was kind of he didn't say it exactly like that, but that was really how it came across, was like, well, no, I haven't filed for a certificate, but I've been doing this long enough to know.
To me, it shows, like, for board certified, it doesn't mean it's just a piece of paper. Doesn't mean you're good at what you do. If you compare Dr. Curry and the other two psychologists, like, these people, like, she had experience, but she also followed the rules, the golden rules of psychology, which one of them is on the APA board. And I am surprised his license hasn't been taken away for unethical practice, because the fact of the matter is, if you're doing something unethical, in this case, what are you doing in your other case?
Yeah.
So that makes me sparks like, okay, if you're doing this, what else are you doing?
He was just also very combative behaviorally, and have had this very much demeanor of like,
oh my God, don't test me.
Don't test me. And if you're working in mental health in any form, then that is absolutely so far from the behavior and demeanor that you should have.
I mean, he already had a lot of bad reviews.
Did he?
Somebody Googled him, and like he was like a 2 point something stars for reviews. So he was already bad. He keeps on referencing movies and video, but not actually talking to a client, which makes me think he's a research psychologist, not a clinical psychologist, but a researcher. And researchers go based off data and what they see versus the interaction with a person one-to-one. Why would you call that person that does not have that? But then again, half the time I don't get what Amber Heard's team is doing, because they're like, they ran out of time. They can't ask a lot of questions. They're now only have an hour. Only an hour and 15 minutes.
I love that.
And Depp team still has 7 hours left. And it's like, they can't really, I know everybody's tired, because to me, it's kind of like a marathon. One of the hardest part is the ending stretch, but you have to go the mile, because sometimes that last part is what you remember most in your head, because it is the most current. And I know we all know everybody's tired and everything, but we also have to remember this is a defamation civil trial, and some civil trials takes a very long time, but at least there's a timer on it.
Yeah,
at least the judge put a timer, like, we're not gonna go past Memorial Day weekend. You're not. And if once your time is done, you're done.
Yeah, and that's, I think, really interesting, because for those of us who've never had cause to interact in a court situation may not know that that's even something that happens. Court TV and dramas don't go over the details and the facts. So having a timer as even a part of the process is news to a lot of people. So I thought that's been really interesting just to follow that.
For me, it's just because like it's most of people don't pay attention to video trials just because it's a video trial, no one cares. This is a case where you get to see what happens in trials and actual happening, and see how and why attorneys get paid money to do what they do, because sometimes you're going to get bad attorneys, and you're going to have some really good ones that you have to pay through the nose for, but that's because they are good. They are one of the best. And continue on this, like because for Depp teams, they chose not on the criteria, but who has the experience and knows what they're doing. Because it's just like all these witnesses from Johnny's side are all very knowledgeable, but also very able to connect with people and jurors, and that is a very important thing when it comes down to it. And like,
go ahead.
Let's see. Okay, I'm trying to think because there's so much information. Because also, I don't think we talked about Amber's tests. We may have, just because Amber kind of got slaughtered in her testimony, because Vasquez has now become a celebrity. They like make her a partner, because she just slaughters both Amber and her witnesses. She asks very specific questions. Most of the objections that were made by Camille, Elaine, always got mostly overruled.
Yeah,
because the question makes sense upon how to ask, and it is very interesting to see that. And there's so much stuff, like at this point in time, I think a lot of people are hoping that the jury sees what we see and that he will win. I mean, the obvious thing is her case will not win. There's just there is no way of winning, because as a normal person, based on the information I have received, even if without that information, I'm like, I barely know you as a star, and you say you lost $50 million in deals. How is that possible?
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm like, I don't know you. Why would I expect you to be paid the big bucks? That doesn't make any sense.
Yes, and I think that we've continually said over the course of this that it's been my experience, and in everyone that I've talked to, they'll say, I don't think I've ever seen her in any movies. And then when you bring one up, for example, Zombieland was one that came up in conversation. I said, oh, I actually have seen her in something. She was in Zombieland. And they go, oh, really? Who? And then you tell them the character and they're like, oh, that was her. Because it's so, I don't want to be directly negative. I try not to. But honestly, her acting in most of the movies that people have been referencing in our conversations have been very forgettable. She's just sort of there. So, and I, as we've said, I haven't seen Aquaman, had never intended to, for my own personal reasons. I have a pet peeve thing about the underwater conversations. It's weird. So I was never going to watch it regardless of her being in it. But even just in the previews, very forgettable. And then they had, let's see, let me verify so that I get this exactly right. I'm checking my notes here. It was Walter Hamada, the president of DC Films at Warner Brothers. They actually had him testifying, and he very specifically said that at no point was any of this trial or domestic stuff or whatever anything to do with her dealings, and the only reason that she had been considered to maybe be replaced was because of a lack of chemistry between the actors, and that
which they are doing.
Yes, and that those decisions were made quite a long time ago. And the only thing that I even remember that stuck from Amber's opinion that somehow they were cutting her out of the movie was based on getting the script rewrites and her part getting reduced throughout those rewrites. But let's be real here, that's part of the process of filmmaking. They do rewrites based on budget, based on time, based on so many other elements of the resources that are available to them, that she could have had scenes cut for a million different reasons. And taking it personally is just another sign of not having a good attitude within the industry, because as is very common, it's, there are no small parts, only small actors. So if she doesn't like that her part is getting reduced, then she's being a small actor essentially in that point. Because if the CEO is saying they didn't have chemistry, it all came down to editing to make it look like chemistry, and still many viewers felt like they didn't have chemistry even after that, it's not a great sign. And that they really only kept her for the sequel because it was easier and probably cheaper than taking the time to go and find somebody else as a replacement at that stage of the whole process. It was just not that convenient for them, especially when they have someone under contract. It was just kind of weighing the cost of having to edit extra for her bad acting, as opposed to the cost of postponing filming to find another actor and potentially negotiating a deal that would cost more for that actor. So it had nothing to do with any of these claims. It was purely down to her forgettableness.
Yeah. Let's hit the pause thing and then
yes,
into the chat. Okay.
Take this button.
The thing is, especially because what we had to focus on is that he said that her contract could not be negotiated because she already had a contract that says you're going to get paid either way. Even if we get rid of you, you're still going to get paid this amount of money, and that's it. We can scrap you, we can replace you, but you're still going to get paid no matter what. And so therefore, like, there's no way for that to be, no way for her to negotiate. And that's from the president. There's also the fact that, like, the person they asked, her talent agent, I think something or another, like, oh, Aquaman was the best movie ever. I'm like, there is a lot. If there's any geeks on that jury, they're gonna know that's a lie. because when it comes down to people who love superhero movies, they're going to know Aquaman's at the bottom. It is.
Mm-hmm.
Because there are so many other different, there's Spider-Man, Deadpool, just a whole bunch of other superhero movies that have done a lot better.
Yeah. For a DC superhero movie, yeah, it has been one of their best because they just don't know how to get a superhero movie right. I'm sorry, they just don't. But it's also a strange choice. Like Jason Momoa in the part, yes, everybody wanted it. It's awesome. He can lay claim to that throne forever, but it's not going to change the fact that the concept of Aquaman as a superhero merman, it doesn't always really work. They spent a lot of time talking about her makeup. I found it really interesting when someone in the magic of social media had shared a picture of Amber having a scratch on her forehead in the trial. She has some scratch on her forehead for whatever reason, and she has makeup on, and that scratch is clearly visible in the photos from the stand. And I would imagine maybe the jurors might have the same thought as the person who shared the picture, because they said, how is it that she's able to hide broken noses, black eyes, split lips, perfectly invisible under makeup, but a tiny little scratch on her forehead is not hidden at all by all of that makeup? That immediately, to me, would call into question all of that accuracy. And I would assume, as these jurors seem to be very invested, that they would notice something like that as well and be like, well, if I'm seeing a scratch on you from 10 feet away, how would I not be able to see all of that?
A lot of attorneys on TikTok and other videos that people have done is you cannot assume what what the jury is thinking. I'm kind of have to go into that just a tiny bit, just because there are 6 jurors and there are about 3 alternate jurors. So if something happens to one, the other one has to step in as the juror. And this, with that many people, I do not believe that one of them hasn't had a black eye before.
Mm-hmm.
Or had something where there's a big, huge bruise on their body, and they can see how the discoloration happens, and that no makeup would probably do that. So I think it's pretty far-fetched to do that, because I have to think that they're also thinking about common sense too.
Mm-hmm.
But that's also based on what their information they're hearing is like. They did makeup cover that, then they have to think, well, I had one time when I was like, I've had that before. That didn't do nothing. That thing was big and huge.
In my mind, the two that stood out was the split lip with the red lipstick on James Corden. If you have a split lip, no amount of makeup is going to cover that. I am someone who just has naturally very dry lips, and I can tell you that putting lipstick on cracked, split, dry, peeling lips is just going to make them look way worse. It points out all those flaws. So if you have a big split, you're screaming attention at that wound. So for her to say that that red lip was to hide something is just ridiculous. And also, actually having watched the clips from Corden, I'm sorry, just no. When there is someone in Southern culture who's doing that fake nice thing, it's very like etiquette politeness, where they do things like saying what? It's passive aggressive. Thank you. It is passive aggressive. I feel like there's another word for it in specific, but yes, it's passive aggressive, where they're doing saying things like, "Oh, bless your heart." I'm sorry, but that's what I read when she makes most of the faces that she's doing in court, in her appearances. It's always this sort of silent, I'm judging you because I think I'm better than you. And she does not hide it well. It's in the eyes, it's in the smirks, it's very clear.
For me here, just because like coming from a lot, like what I know from what I research or what I see for DV victims, is that if there is, just because they can't get out something and there is a physical appearance of marks and there is bruises, really heavy bruises, and they try to cover it up with makeup, yes they do, but sometimes they are not able to because it's so obvious right there. Usually they would make an excuse. Oh, I fell down, or I hit myself on a chair, or something like that. Then there's also the fact that during Johnny Depp's testimony the first time, he said he was protecting Amber when his finger was cut off. And usually that is something that people do, saying, I did it myself. It was myself. I did it too. And then once they get out, it's like, no, I did that because I was protecting them.
Mm-hmm.
And it goes in with very much consistency of that part of Johnny being the victim here. And so it is something to note. People who are from communities that support DV victims are showing support for Johnny Depp just recently. And they're like, that shows a lot, because I don't think when this thing all started that they supported Amber, or didn't say they support Amber in this situation, because during their divorce, it came out with a statement that they were both toxic. And I'm pretty sure those communities, DB, the people who support DB, they're like, we're not gonna touch this. It was both of you guys, that's not DB. And now one of those groups is supporting Johnny Depp, that is in support, that is for DV victims. And that's huge.
I saw a clip that was from a publicity panel where Johnny Depp is sitting next to Dakota Johnson. Is that her name?
Yes.
Okay. And he has the damage to his finger, and you can see them talking back and forth, and he does exactly that. He makes an excuse and he kind of laughs it off, this injury, and you can see him, he puts his hand up to his face afterwards and looks away, and he is visibly shaking, like a victim who's on high alert, who has just covered for what's happened to them, and they're trying to deflect, and you can see the look in her eyes as she side-eyes him like, you just told me a lie. What really happened? You can tell she saw right through it. And that's exactly what it made me think of, is in that moment, he was covering for what had really happened, because it was not the time and place to reveal what had happened to him. And it was very clear that he was visibly shaken in that moment and just over it. And that was not included in any kind of court thing.
This is why, when it comes down to it, her case against him, I don't think she's going to win that one. Just simply because the numbers don't match up, her story doesn't match up, and the stuff that the attorney said on behalf, the 3 statements, doesn't really correlate with her losing out on things. And when one of the things for defamation is that has to meet a certain criteria, and it doesn't. So more than likely, her case is gone. It's a lost cause. They can still go for it because they're leaving for the jury side. More than likely, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
The question, because I'm pretty sure the jury's going to deliberate for a long time, because there's a lot of evidence to go through, a lot of depositions, things that we didn't get to read and stuff. There's a lot of stuff to go through, and they have to talk with each other upon what's happening. And right now, at the beginning of the trial, you probably say more than likely Johnny Depp's gonna lose, because the standard for defamation is so high, especially because a lot of people say U.S. defamation case is so high because people have freedom of speech. And in this case, like as we were going through the 6-week case, a lot of it changed to the point where there's a bigger possibility, like more like 75% closer to it. 75% of people say more than likely he can win, just because there is most of the criteria have been met. Was what she said a lie? Yes. Was it intentional? Yes. Did she do it with malice? Yes.
Yeah.
And the third one, is it easily implied in the article that this was about this person? Yes, it was. And all 3 of those things have to be met, because there's that's 4 markers that you have to get. And in Amber's case, was what the attorney said true or false? It was basically true. And of course, was it made in malicious? No, it wasn't. They're just trying to, like, you're attacking me. I'm attacking you back. That's how it goes. The fact that his attorney got banned on Twitter is irrelevant. And the third, let's see here, and it wasn't done with malice. And then there was a little bit of truth in there. And was it about them? Yeah, of course, that was easy. But there is like the last part, with if it was done with malice, and it wasn't. And did you suffer any loss because of it? And there she didn't suffer.
Mm-hmm.
No.
I think that's a big part for me personally was when you're talking about defamation and damages, essentially, his case was very clear about this quantity of money, this 50,000 or 50,000, what am I talking about? 50 million, was based on specific numbers of deals that he already had in play that were lost. So it's a specific number for that reason. Her number is straight up double what he asked for. And that is very plain and simple. It's very obviously, well, you asked for 50, so I'm going to ask for 100. There's no clear numbers and evidence that she was in any way going to receive that sum of money specifically. So for me personally, that's what really kills her case the fastest, is that we have, like you said, there's no evidence that she lost out in general, but certainly not that sum. Whereas his sum makes sense. That math adds up. That, okay, you did lose that amount. That makes sense.
The thing for me is also like the ACLU testified on Johnny's behalf. And in their statements, they said the very first draft, it talked about Johnny. Then it kept on getting rewritten to the point where it was just heavily applied, or tried to be like as discreet, but not that discreet, because then you kind of know where you're referencing, who you're referencing.
Yeah.
And so that part is where everything comes in. It's like, is it about this person? Yes, it is, because you're doing multiple drafts. The very first draft had Johnny's name in it. And then multiple drafts after, it was implied, but didn't say his name. But it's still there. Their indication is still there, no matter what. Yes. So that the ACLU kind of blew that part for Amber.
Yeah, they pretty much straight up said that they edited it down just enough to pass the legality of the non-disclosure agreement, which that straight up blows it out of the water. That we edited around where we were allowed to.
Yeah. And the second thing, was it with malice? Of course. Why would you put it out there? Why would you? I mean, you talk about yes, but why would you put it after you said there's a non-disclosure agreement and you're trying to move forward? Why would you talk about it? Most of this account goes to DV victims. Like, they want to get away from this person. They don't want to do anything. They don't want to deal with them. They don't want to talk to it. They don't want to talk about it until they're ready. This is where it's like, this was done with malice because you did it.
Especially because it was timed with the release of her movie. So that to me is more clear that you wrote this article with the intention of releasing it as publicity for yourself at his expense.
Yeah. And then there's also like, was this true? Because she says that she wrote it. Okay. Was what she wrote true? Her what happened on her stand, to her on the stand, shows that she is not credible. Mm-hmm. She lies all the time. She embellishes. So therefore, one can associate that what she wrote was not the truth. Mm-hmm. So that meets that criteria.
Yes.
And then the fourth one is the damages. Did you lose any money? And like the expert said, is you have to project. The only way you can project something is from past work. And if your past work don't add up to the amount, then there's possibly that you didn't suffer much of a damage. Basically, Amber Heard didn't suffer any damage because her numbers were already low. Johnny, given the career he has and his past movies, you can see where it is. You can see the trajectory. I mean, you might have to do a graph for some people, but hey, whatever.
Well, speaking of graphs, though, that was what was really interesting in one of the videos I watched today, was that one of Amber's experts had used hashtags to claim evidence that the trial had damaged her, because some of these hashtags that supported Johnny and were negative towards her spiked at various times. His witness for the plaintiff side was fantastic because this witness was so good. He explained why the hashtags were completely irrelevant. He used charts. I loved it. He said, okay, well, if the article came out at this time and the trial happened at this time, let's look at the spikes. And they were completely nothing to do with. There were no spikes in use of these hashtags around any of these events. And what the defending witness had claimed was that because certain hashtags were used in conjunction with each other, that was somehow relevant. Now, any of us who use hashtags regularly know that generally you're using clusters of hashtags. I'm going to use ones that are relevant to whatever I'm talking about, and they're going to be similar because it's the same subject. So if the same couple people are saying the same specific things, then you're going to see those spikes of clusters of hashtags together because of the content that they're talking about, which is not related to whatever else is happening. Because if I'm talking about something, it doesn't matter what else is going on. I'm going to say those same hashtags to get my clicks. It has nothing to do with the case. And it was great to see that infographic. We'll probably put that as well in the links because it was really good. And I'm doing a terrible job of explaining it, but that witness was fantastic.
So what he did, so Johnny Depp was doing to explain the graph, it was the Q scores to show where the relevance is and where it stand. Her agent was basically who screwed her over kind of here as well, because she kind of brushed like, oh, she's a great movie star. She had the same rise to fame as Zendaya or Gal Gadot or Chris Pine or Jason Jason. I'm gonna say Jason because right now I can't say his name right now. So, and then his actor said like, no, you should toss out her testimony altogether because one, these people have all had very long careers in the spotlight, and they are people who had more movies where they are the main character, not a side character, but the main one. Mm-hmm. Because Chris Pine was the person who played Spock, the captain in Kirk, in Star Trek. Jason Momoa has been in Game of Thrones, where he is very well known for. Mm-hmm. And he was somewhat, he was somewhat a side character-ish. Not really.
But his star was rising, and that was kind of why he got chosen. Maybe it's not why he got chosen for Aquaman, but that's why fans campaigned for him to become Aquaman. So just the success of that movie in general has nothing to do with her, and I would say 90% to do with Momoa, if not more, because that everyone wanted to see him specifically. She's just there.
Yeah, and Zendaya, and then they make it like Zendaya has been in the Disney world for a very long time, since she was a kid up until now. She's one of those rare instances where a child who are in the Disney world didn't go off the deep end.
Yeah, she had Disney, she did Dancing with the Stars, she's on Euphoria, she's got Spider-Man, this whole list of big things.
Yeah,
as well as being like a Met Gala fashion icon on her own. Amber's not doing stuff like that.
Yeah, and then Gal Gadot, she is literally Wonder Woman. She's the main character of her own movie.
Yeah.
So, and plus Gal Gadot has a lot of big hit movies. She was in Red, which apparently I have been told is not very good.
Red Notice, yeah.
Red Notice. There's other movies that she's been in, but I can't remember.
Yeah, that's a whole other list. But yes, that I think that it's still very clear when she was in Wonder Woman and its sequels, which I'm including the Batman franchise in that, it was the buzz again for her was like it was for Jason Momoa of we want to see her in this main role. Yeah. And Amber was not campaigned for in that way. She's not the primary.
Yeah. And the fact that they talk about, okay, she didn't have much chemistry with Jason Momoa. Now I can say so. Okay. But when people talk about chemistry, I want to give you a very subjective example just because we've seen them together for a very long time. And that is Emily Clark. Her and his chemistry during the Game of Thrones, you can see it, how they acted, how they communicate with each other. It came very good, and it came off screen when you're watching the show. You can see the chemistry. You can like, oh, this looks really good, and it shows how good of the actor they are when they connect.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that helps with the chemistry of acting, because especially because those two actors are very close. Even after the movie's done, they are very close. He said it multiple times. Like every time he goes to England, he goes to see her. That's why a lot of people are petitioning to replace her with her. And by what I mean, Emily replace Amber, because Amelia has that presence of that domineering person, because we've seen her be that way in movies like Game of Thrones. We also seen the other side where she can be submissive or very bubbly, like her personality. Like I forgot what that movie is, where the guy's in his handicap and he's in a wheelchair.
Me Before You.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah,
where
great movie.
Where she plays a character, or the Christmas movie where she's the elf.
Yes, I need to see that.
So like you can see how well she works with other. This is I think I have to. Now that I bring it out, I'm like, this also goes to her character, because when you're the person that is doing the abusing, a lot of times, sometimes people, you give off this vibe to certain people, and usually doesn't work out well, because usually when some people who are very sensitive, like to people's, I'm gonna say aurora, or just how they feel. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you can get that feeling. It's like when you this is for all the girls here. I don't know if the guys are, and also guys. It's when you get that feeling when you know who you're talking to is creep. It's a creep, and it's trying to like fish you to see if they can catch you, and then they try not to let go or try to get you as much as possible. And I think that's where it is. It's like she's like one of those people where you're like, you kind of get that feeling that the person is a butthead, mm-hmm. and you know they're a butthead, but you kind of have to do what you need to do.
Yeah. There's a YouTube channel called The Behavioral Arts, and I am a big fan of his now. I had never heard of him before this trial, but I have loved watching him break these things down, because he explains why she's not believable. And that's, when she's on the stand and she does these deep frowns, her mouth is doing this really cartoony deep frown, but it doesn't seem genuine. And then if you look at the forehead, it's more of this sharp, angular, like if you were angry, and making an angry eyebrows with sad frown doesn't really make sense. And our natural inner mechanisms that are part of human survival to read expressions are automatically going to tell you subconsciously that doesn't feel right. Because if you were in nature and you saw that, it doesn't work. And for a lot of us lay people, we're going to see those things and they're going to look fake, but we don't know why they're fake. So having a professional who says, oh, well, every time that their brow furrows and they're at the wrong time, that's what that means. Or the times when she's looking in different directions, she's got very shifty eyes. But then there was a video of the behavioral arts discussing the case with another YouTube channel, Law and Lumber, which I also have fallen in love with from this case. They were both discussing her mannerisms and the times when, for example, someone covers their face and mouth. And he explains that if you are watching these behaviors and it's something that you do all the time, then it's something that you will do all the time, that's fine. But for somebody who does not do those behaviors all the time and does specific behaviors in conjunction with other behaviors, that's the cue of deception. So I know, for example, as I'm talking to you, I'm noticing how often I touch my face and put my hand to my face, because that's a very natural behavior for me. As a more shy, closed off person, I've learned to cover my face a lot as part of my survival. So for me, that would be a normal behavior. For someone like Amber, who's a professional actor, your face is your moneymaker. You don't often put your hands up. But when she is both on the stand and at their little table, the times when she puts her hands up to her face is more significant, especially when it's in conjunction with anger in the forehead, or one of the things that he points out is her breathing. And that was enlightening as well, because when she's telling these dramatic stories and she's looking really emotional, there's a lack of tears that seem like they should be there. Many discussions of the crying with no tears, but it's also the breathing is wrong, because when you're actually anxious and worked up, your breathing's going to speed up. You have a hard time catching your breath. It's really just fast. But she's taking deep breaths like a trained actor would to get the words out. And it's very practiced. So even though everything in her mannerisms is trying to say, I'm stressed, the breathing, the expressions are all saying, I'm practiced. And so again, for those of us who are not professionals to notice what those cues are, our brain is still going, that's not right. And so you can tell, but we don't know why. And so it's so interesting to me to then see the people who are still her supporters in spite of that, who are saying, if you support Johnny Depp, it's just because you're a fan of his and you don't support victims. That's not the case at all. Do I like his movies? Some of them, yeah. But it's not about that. It's about watching and saying, this does not look like real life. Whereas when he's on the stand, he's doing things in a natural way. He's hunching his shoulders when he's sad. He's speaking more quietly when it's difficult to say. He's not averting his eyes. He's not trying to hide the ugly stuff. That's a huge thing for me, is he's admitted, yes, I've took a lot of drugs. Yes, I broke some stuff. Yes, I did these things. It's true. Those things are true. But when it's her on the stand, there is no acknowledgement of any of the wrongdoings. It's just blanket denying everything. And that makes you less credible, because he is saying these things are lies and these things are truths. And I was not perfect. Whereas she's saying everything is total BS. It's all wrong. I'm perfect is essentially the message that comes out, and nobody is perfect. It's less believable because she's not acknowledging any of her own behavior. Now we have to talk about the big bombshell, which is Kate Moss.
Kate Moss, I think, helped nail the nail in the coffin, kind of, for Amber, just because how she spoke and said, no, I slipped and fell in Jamaica and hurt my back. He was always nice to me. He never abused me. We were together for 4 years. This kind of, even though it was in the 90s, the difference is between who they brought up as an ex. There's a difference between her or whoever Amber brought up. I forgot who she was. The difference is that she was with Johnny for 4 years. So she has a pretty good idea of who he is and how he is. And that gives her more credibility. And her answer were basically short, sweet, and straight to the point.
Oh, yeah. That was what was amazing to me, was that her entire testimony was about 4 minutes. Very straight to the point. That was just beautiful. It was beautiful.
Where did Amber think that she got kicked? Because the question was she ever kicked or hurt by Johnny, where he pushed her down the stairs, something like that? It's like, no, and no. And then you have to think, I think the jury's in their head, and more than likely it's kind of like, okay, so how did Amber get that thought in her head?
Yes, and some of that was almost mentioned, but was struck because of her team. When Depp was on the stand, he basically said, I told her the truth of what happened with Kate once, because they were on a vacation and it started to rain, and it reminded him of that. So he told her the story of Kate falling down, and then she twisted it and used it against him. In the process of him saying that story, they objected. So the jury did get a chance technically to hear it. They're not supposed to use that information, but they can't unhear it. So
yeah. So it's just like, even though you're not going to take into consideration, but what Kate Moss said did it, because a lot of them were like, oh my gosh, she's so beautiful. this is a gorgeous model. Look at this pumpkin over here that we're sitting next to. No, her lies. They were referring, I think, more or less, it helps build this case where there is a correlation between her and his abusive mother.
Oh yeah.
There is a reason why, like, how could you go from this to that? And the only reason that a lot of people can think of is because you're attracted to what you're familiar to.
Mm-hmm.
And if what you're familiar to is someone being abusive to you, you're going to be drawn to that. So for some odd reason, you are.
Mm-hmm.
Until you're like, okay, this is not working out, I'm out. Okay, so at this point in time, we are also gonna go into our final thoughts on this whole long roller coaster journey of a trial. And Katie, I want to get your final thoughts, and then I'm gonna get my final thoughts, and then yeah.
Okay. My honest opinion is I don't think either one of them is perfect. I think that's important for a lot of people to get through their heads, because there's such a polarized thing about this is he's not perfect. That's fine. He doesn't have to be perfect. I think he's clearly a victim, though. That's pretty darn clear. And I think that because his statements have been so consistent throughout the years, I'm going to default to that. Okay, his are consistent, and you're more likely to be telling the truth the longer that your story stays the same. Whether any of the things that she said are true or not is very unclear. Everything that's come out of her mouth and her terribly inept team is irrelevant. He's gotten a chance to say his piece, and the jury's decision almost also seems irrelevant, because what he will monetarily gain from it isn't really what he's looking to gain anyway. So I would hope that this has a positive impact on his physical and mental health. So that's pretty much my final thoughts, as I'm ready for it to be done. I was so invested this whole time, and I'm just so ready for it to be over. And I hope that both of them can let it be over, whatever happens.
Okay, so here are my final thoughts here. I am a person that I have to look at everything before I make my final judgment, because I cannot assume anything, because nothing is ever what it seems in real life. And until you see evidence of that, I can't make a decision based off of a person's hearsay. As far as Amber goes, I didn't really care for her. I haven't seen any movies. I didn't watch that zombie movie, because I don't like satire of zombie movies. And like, to your point, like, she's not gonna let this go, because that's the only way she gets fame. Yeah. That's the only reason why people know her name. Mm-hmm. It's through this bad thing. And like Black China suing the Kardashians, at some point in time, it gets old. People start getting annoyed and saying, you need someone else to make your coin, because this isn't working for you. And then also coming down to her PR team, who have been working very hard to try to turn the narrative, but it's just not working, because narrative, the court of public opinion, Johnny has won, hands down. Every time I see a poll, the percentages is 2% for Amber, only 2%.
Wow.
Okay. Versus Johnny Depp was like over 86, 96, somewhere in the higher levels. So there's a saying goes, play super games, win super prizes. This is kind of in essence, this is what she's getting. You took a chance and played this card by going against your non-disclosure agreement, where it says both of you guys are at fault for this relationship breaking down. You decided to choose and write something about your marriage that you knew was gonna have some traction and it's gonna do some damage. And given the fact that you were with him for, I think, a year or so, I'm not quite sure, I can't remember how long their relationship, but I do know it wasn't as long as Kate Moss's. But the difference is that during the whole time he was in a relationship with Amber, he did fight back. He did argue with her. He did what he could, but he fought back, but he also tried to stay and make it work. Mm-hmm. And so with that, when you do that, and you know how this person is, and the person is not going to stand down, but he's also going to give you the benefit of doubt, plays into your naivety or your thinking that this person will not do what they're going to do. And now here is your prize. The court of public opinion is on Johnny's side. The fact that after this, more than likely, no director, actor, or anybody in the movie industry that has the coin to place you where you want to be, like Gal Gadot, that's never going to happen. You burn that bridge because Johnny has enough contacts with everybody because of his long career. Mm-hmm. He has enough contact to save himself, and the support of his fans adds to it. Her, no one will touch her. No movies, don't expect her to be in any movies soon, because more than likely she's gonna be an extra, not a co-character. She can audition as much because people have seen this, invested, and movie producers that have seen this. They don't want to touch you because of what you do. And so at the end of the day, I mean, I do think jury opinion is good because sometimes jury's opinions, they are seeing something that we aren't, because we're a little bit biased because we are seeing what other people are seeing and making marks on here. They have to focus on what they see, not the analysts that we hear upon everything else. They cannot hear that. So to me, I want to see what they see, because I'm kind of curious what the answer is. For me, I'm hoping that he does win, because even though no one expected him to win, I think it'd be a plus that they agree with what we saw this whole time.
I do actually have a follow-up question, because I'm curious about your take on this one specifically. There was some drama in the courtroom this week with a woman coming in. She claimed that her baby was his, which obviously is BS, but do you think that that spectacle will have any impact on anything?
No, because when it comes down to court, you see a lot of crazy things. And that's something that's, if you live in a small town, in a small place, now you know who the crazies are. So that doesn't disturb them, because more than likely they've seen it before. It doesn't disturb people. It doesn't disrupt anything. So that's what I'm saying. Like, all the outside stuff is just noise for the jurors, because they have to focus on what's in the room and what is being told and what the evidence say. And the evidence, based on a lot of people's what they see and evidence, is that her story doesn't hold. His does. The reason why, especially the motion to strike the whole Amber's case, the judge didn't give reason. She's like basically her reason is like, we're gone this far. There's no reason for me to strike it. It's left up to the jury to decide. When it came to when it was the exact opposite at the midway point, the 3-week mark, she gave reason why they strike. They said three reasons to strike. 2 of them got struck down, and she gave her reason because there was no merit and no probability for this. No, that's not gonna happen. The other last one is for us to see, and basically saying that part is gonna be up to the jury. So, like I said, my final thought is this: Johnny is ahead. The likelihood of if he's going to win is pretty high right now, but there is a slight chance of him losing. But when it comes to court of public opinion, a majority of people are on their side. What we take from this trial is that, 1, men can be victims too. Just because they look manly and husky doesn't mean they can't be hurt physically by someone who is weak. I guess I can say weaker. I put that in quotation marks, than them. Mm-hmm. And that when it comes down to it, does this case hurt women? Yes, it does, because it shows that sometimes people can be very vindictive and use things for their own gain. Johnny, hope to see you in more movies, because you have shown the world that your star is still as bright as ever. Amber, sorry to say, your career is over. So that is my final thoughts. So we hope you have a lovely Memorial Day, and hopefully you enjoy our podcast upon this trial, and hopefully there isn't a mistrial.
Oh my goodness. Let's all just wish for no mistrials. Absolutely. If you haven't checked out our previous 2 videos on this trial, please do. We said a lot, so please check those out if you haven't already. And otherwise, we will look forward to future non-trial related content.
All right. Talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for watching this episode of 88 Chat. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment.